Hi, good afternoon, everyone. You're welcome to this NESG pre-summit, where we'll be discussing together how to boost local manufacturing of medicines and vaccines in Nigeria. Thank you very much for accepting the invitation and for showing up. So just by way of introduction, again, it's my pleasure to welcome you all today. I will be anchoring this session. My name is Dr. Nkatachukwu, and I'm the facilitator at the Health Policy Commission of the NESG. On a 9 to 5, I'm the founding partner of Health Systems Consult, HSCL, a health consulting group operating out of Nigeria and 5 other African countries. So the overarching mandate of the Health Policy Commission, which I lead as the facilitator, is to create a system that guarantees not only health for all, but health by all. So this necessitates that we work together to find ways to mobilize additional resources for health and ensure that these resources are distributed in such a way that it really guarantees the health that we all want as Nigerians. So we've known in Nigeria for a long time that we need to do a lot more to become more self-reliant in terms of producing the things we consume. And in this specific case, medicines and vaccines. Nigeria and most of Africa still imports about 70% of the pharmaceutical products that we consume. And COVID has shown us that even if you have money to continue to import these items, there will come a time when your money will not even be able to get you these items. We saw outside the struggle to get COVID materials, we saw stock out of drugs for common ailments, chronic diseases and all that, because there were issues with shipping, there were issues with manufacturing plants in other countries that were shut down and all that. So the time is now to sit together, to figure out together what are the things we need to do to further move Nigeria forward in manufacturing the medicines, vaccines, and all the other health commodities that we use in Nigeria. The African Free Continental Trade Agreement further provides opportunities for us to also boost our economy from boosting local manufacturing, because now we have not just our market, which is still basically untapped, but the entire African market of over $14 billion per annum to tap into. So we've convened this roundtable, or we're convening this roundtable today to basically discuss amongst ourselves, identify key players who are already engaging in some form of local manufacturing of medicines or vaccines, identify others who are interested, but are yet to start. Discuss amongst the key players, whether you're already manufacturing or you're interested, and investors as well. What are the key bottlenecks? What are the pain points to local manufacturing? What are the things that if we move out of the way, we'll be able to ramp up manufacturing and position ourselves to actually start manufacturing vaccines, and hopefully not just for Nigeria, but at scale to supply to our neighbors. So really, this is a frank talk roundtable. We want to hear what's going on and what can we do so that for NESG as a platform, we can take all that together to build up an advocacy package, to further engage with government, leveraging our relationship as a private sector platform, and also to engage with development sector players. You will see that we've also invited some of the DFIs to the table so that together we can hopefully leapfrog the system and see Nigeria really take its right place in terms of manufacturing of pharmaceuticals within Africa. So once again, you're welcome, and thanks a lot for accepting to be here. So I would quickly introduce the panelists that we have. So we have two sets of panelists. We have the panelists that you see on the screen. We have other panelists that are not on the screen, but who would also be contributing. So both are equal panelists. So let me just start by first introducing those that we have on the screen. Thank you. Just give me a second, please. Okay. Yeah, sorry for the delay. I was just trying to pull up. So we do have first a representative of the Honorable Minister for Trade and Investment, His Excellency Otumba Ni Adebayo, who will be taking the keynote address. We also have on the panel Dr. Aurelia Nguyen, who is the Managing Director of COVAX, the COVAX facility at Gavi. And in her role, Aurelia is leading the coordination of procurement and delivery of COVID-19 vaccines for up to 190 participating economies, including Nigeria. Prior to her appointment, she was the Managing Director of the Office of the COVAX facility, well, before it became fully COVAX, and also served as Managing Director for Vaccines and Sustainability at Gavi. And before Gavi, Aurelia had worked with GSK for upwards of 5 years, where she was actually leading the Access to Medicines initiative. We also have on the panel Mazi Sam Ohuabunwa. Mazi Sam led the management buyover of Pfizer. Pfizer incorporated shares in Pfizer Products PLC, transforming the resultant company Nimeth International Pharmaceuticals PLC into a medium-sized Nigerian research and development built pharmaceutical company. He voluntarily retired from the company after 33 years in the industry. He's a fellow of several professional organizations and the past chairman, Nigerian Economic Summit Group, NESG. He's also currently the president of the Pharmaceutical Sector of Nigeria, PSN. You're welcome, sir. We also have Mr. Mokpa Esuga, who is a quality management specialist with many years of experience in the pharmaceutical industry. He's presently the chief of party, that's the lead of the Promoting the Quality of Medicines Plus program, PQM Plus. PQM Plus is a USAID funded program being implemented by the United States Pharmacopoeia. He currently leads the team, or he's led the team to secure ISO 9001 certification for a pharmaceutical company, the first in the Nigerian pharma industry, and the first WHO Certificate of Good Manufacturing Practice certification in West Africa. Mokpa has significant experience in the pharmaceutical manufacturing industry, where he rose through several ranks, such as technical operations manager at May & Baker, as well as technical operations and manufacturing manager at Swiss Pharma Nigeria /Roche. You're welcome, Mr. Mokpa. So we also have Dr. Fidelis Ayeba, who is the founder and managing director of Fitson Healthcare Limited. Dr. Fidelis is also currently the chairman of the PMG Man and a council of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industries. He is also a fellow of the Institute of Corporate Affairs Management, Chartered Institute of Administrators, Member Institute of Directors. Mr. Fidelis is also the chairman and director of many other companies like NEM Insurance PLC, Synergy Healthcare Limited, and Jubilee Life Mortgage Limited. Dr. Fidelis, you're welcome to the panel.
Thank you very much.
And on the panel as well, we have Mr. Patrick Aja, who is the managing director Mr. Patrick Aja, sorry, who is the managing director and CEO of May & Baker Vaccines Limited. May & Baker. He's a passionate and visionary leader with over 2 decades of progressive experience and responsibility in a variety of business environments, ranging from pharma to fast-moving consumer goods, telecoms, and manufacturing. As you are aware, May & Baker also has a relationship with the federal government that bettered biovaccines that is currently the national vehicle for vaccine manufacturing. You're welcome, Mr. Patrick. We have again on the panel, Dr. Abdul Mukhtar from the African Development Bank. Dr. Abdul Mukhtar, sorry, please, the Zoom keeps popping up something that blocks my screen. So Dr. Abdul Mukhtar is the Director of Industry and Trade Development at the AFDB. And he was previously Group Chief Strategy Officer with the Dangote Group. Dr. Abdul Mukhtar, you're welcome to the panel. So we have Mr. Lanre Akimbo, who is our boss here at the NESG, a board member who would formally kick off this event. Mr. Lanre, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Okay. So I would formally hand over to Mr. Lanre to formally welcome us to this event. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon or good day, wherever you may be joining us from. Thank you for taking our time to attend this very important pre-summit event. Distinguished heads of ministries, departments and agencies, captains of industries, heads of associations, donor communities, gentlemen of the press, ladies and gentlemen. I have the honor and privilege to welcome you all to this pre-summit event of Nigerian Economic Summit 27, jointly organized by the Nigerian Economic Summit Group and the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget, and National Planning. The COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the inherent weaknesses in Nigeria's health system. It has greatly exposed the risk Nigeria faces by relying on foreign supply of pharmaceutical products. With imports accounting for 70% of local medicine consumption and a significant proportion of Nigerians paying out of pocket for medical expenses, many Nigerians were further impoverished by the rise in prices of drugs and other medical consumables, particularly during the lockdown period. The poor access to medical consumables comes with cascading negative effects on the treatment of disease and overall quality of life. COVID-19 vaccines are critical in the ongoing efforts to stop the spread of the pandemic. However, the world is witnessing inequitable distribution, which is attributable to what we can call vaccine nationalism, with the growing consensus that local manufacturing will promote access to the vaccines in developing countries like Nigeria. The pandemic has reactivated discussions and action towards revitalizing Nigeria's manufacturing ecosystem, including the domestic manufacturing of medicines and vaccines. The Promoting the Quality of Medicine Plus program has supported the increased supply of locally manufactured quality assured medical products for maternal and child healthcare. Also, the Pharmaceutical Society of Nigeria reported that their members accessed over 90% of the CBN 100 billion naira health sector intervention fund. In addition, we also hear media reports that indicate that Nigeria is at the early stages of COVID-19 vaccine development. Therefore, considering the theme of Nigerian Economic Summit 27, securing our future, the fierce urgency of now, this pre-summit event will critically analyze the Nigerian pharmaceutical market demand and supply dynamics, offering feasible approaches to placing Nigeria on the global pharmaceutical production map. This is particularly imperative given that the Nigerian pharmaceutical market was estimated at $607 million in 2017, with an optimistic case for growth to as high as 3.6 billion naira by 2026. $3.6 billion, I beg your pardon, by 2026. Despite significant opportunities in the domestic and export markets, respectively, evidence suggests declining growth in the sector, which is occasioned by low capacity utilization, difficulty in attaining the World Health Organization's good manufacturing practice licensing, reliance on import of active pharmaceutical ingredients, and the impact of the economic crisis occasioned by COVID-19. We therefore hope that today's public-private dialogue will translate into a consensus that will chart a roadmap to place Nigeria on the medicines and vaccines production value chain, tracing challenges and prospects of domestic production and identifying stakeholders to drive collaborative efforts in ramping up local manufacturing capacity for medicines and vaccines. In closing, we believe that setting the agenda towards enhancing domestic production of medicines and vaccines through public-private dialogues is a significant step in highlighting Nigeria's potential in attaining pharmaceutical self-sufficiency. We look forward to a fruitful dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lanre, for formally welcoming us and opening the session. I would want to introduce some additional members of the panel. So sitting in for the minister, we have Judy Melifongu, who is a Special Assistant on Investment and Agribusiness. You are welcome, Judy. We also have from the, you're welcome. We also have from the World Bank / IFC, Dr. Olumide Okola, who is also joining the panel. Dr. Olumide, you're welcome. So quickly before we move to the keynote address, just some quick housekeeping. Please, if you're not speaking at any time, keep your microphone muted, please. And if there's any noise in the background while you're speaking, if you're the one who has the floor, please try and move to a place that is less noisy. Then if you're the representative of Nairo Farm, kindly send a chat message introducing yourself so we can formally introduce you. And then lastly, while I'm moderating, I also have with me two of my colleagues from the NESG as well. Dr. Ola Brown, who is the founder of the Flying Doctors Healthcare Investment Company. She's also the thematic lead for health as a business thematic group of the Health Policy Commission at the NESG. Dr. Ola, as introduced earlier, will be taking the questions and answers. We'll be taking the closing remarks at the end. We also have Dr. Maria Saleh, who is the technical director for maternal, newborn, and child health with Chemonics International. She's the thematic lead of the public health thematic group of the Health Policy Commission at the NESG. So I will be working together with these two nice doctors through the session. Thank you. So over to Judy for the keynote address from the minister. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. So let me deliver the keynote on behalf of the Honourable Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Otunbani Adebayo. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it's an honour to have been provided with the opportunity to speak at this event. On behalf of the Federal Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, let me start by saying thank you to the Nigerian Economic Summit Group for putting together this event, and to the participants from relevant ministries, departments and agencies for joining us. The development of Nigeria's health sector is critical, not just for our nation's development, but for every Nigerian. Rich or poor, young or old, if any of us have the misfortune of needing emergency medical care, this is the system that our lives will ultimately depend on. I've seen many people who thought they would have the luxury of traveling abroad for treatment, but the care they needed had to be administered immediately. And so this system was one that saved them. Establishing self-sufficiency in the local production of medicines and vaccines will undoubtedly go a long way in preserving the lives of Nigerians. The COVID-19 pandemic created a global vaccine production race, with certain countries and companies taking first mover advantage and in turn making billions of dollars from the production of COVID vaccines. The pandemic has also forced countries around the world to examine how self-sufficient they are in the development of medicines, and also further amplified health sector vulnerabilities. Today is an opportunity to analyze where Nigeria stands and what needs to be done to take us to where we need to be. Nigeria, the largest market and economy in Africa, has always possessed the potential to become a major hub for manufacturing pharmaceutical products. Currently, we're only able to meet 30% of our demand through domestic production, which leaves a significant gap that is being met through importation. We know the dangers involved in depending on imported health commodities, and realize not only the importance, but the speed at which the nation needs to start developing these solutions. This conversation extends further than just medicines and must take into consideration medical devices, an area in which we have also focused on improving domestic production. Our total installed annual capacity for syringes is 1.6 billion and 1 billion for needles, while demand is 2.5 billion and 2 billion respectively. So there's a gap. However, our industry players do not produce at full capacity, mainly due to the high cost of production, low uptake by consumers, and importation of low-cost, substandard syringes and needles. The Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment has worked extensively with the Federal Ministry of Health and various other industry players, key stakeholders, and technical partners to develop the National Industrial Policy on Medical Devices. This policy will address issues on high import duty on raw materials and machineries, high interest rate on credit facilities, and also the importation of substandard syringes and needles into the country. Our aim is to ensure that Nigeria produces good quality, affordable, and accessible medical devices, and in turn creates jobs for skilled young Nigerians. We aspire to be self-sufficient in the production of medical devices and position the nation adequately to supply the wider African region, given the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area agreements. Furthermore, this policy is in line with the implementation of Executive Orders 003 and 005, which aim to support the development and uptake of local content. It will be mandatory for all federal health institutions and the federal medical centers and teaching hospitals to use locally manufactured syringes and needles, and ensure that the government procures local syringes for vaccines. We are optimistic that our medical devices policy will contribute significantly to growing the sector and serve as a catalyst to encourage local support and bring about sizable contributions to the nation's GDP. It is my pleasure to have been given the opportunity to say a few words at this pre-summit. I wish all participants a productive and successful interaction, and remind you once again that today's deliberations will not just affect the people in this room, but the health and well-being of our mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, and most importantly, our children, the next generation of Nigerians. Thank you, and God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Judy. We say big thank you on behalf of the minister. It's actually very exciting to hear the efforts being made by your ministry and the Ministry of Health to encourage local manufacturing, even beyond the health sector. And I was particularly excited to hear about the executive orders that will help to start mandating public health institutions to start using using only locally manufactured syringes and needles. And we do hope that this will extend beyond syringes and needles to all other medical consumables, right, that are manufactured in the country that, of course, meet the right standards. Thank you very much. So we will quickly take, Dr. Aurelia was not able to make it here in person because of the intensive negotiations going on with countries around getting additional vaccines down to countries like Nigeria. But she was kind enough to send in a video. So we'll take the special greetings from Dr. Aurelia. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Aurelia Guillen. I'm the Managing Director of the COVAX facility. As you meet today at this roundtable on boosting local manufacture of medicines and vaccines, it's a good moment to reflect on how critical the pharmaceutical market in Nigeria is to Nigeria's future and to driving economic growth. Nigeria and Africa imports, unfortunately today, 70% of pharmaceutical products that are consumed. And COVID has shown that countries, especially large ones like Nigeria, want some level of self-reliance for critical health inputs. We've seen stock out of commodities for many health conditions, including chronic diseases during lockdown. We've seen shortages of products required for COVID care, face masks, PPEs, test kits, and now vaccines. The COVAX facility that I lead was set up as a global multilateral solution to ensure that no countries were left behind and all countries had fair and equitable access to vaccines, and to fight the vaccine nationalism that has led to gross inequities in vaccine distribution. Over the longer term, one of these solutions is also to investigate for key health products more decentralized manufacturing closer to need. This needs to be done in a way that is sustainable over time and has political and technical support. Government and development partners have a big role to play in creating. Hello, my name is Aurelia Guillen. I'm the Managing Director of the COVAX facility. As you meet today at this roundtable on boosting local manufacture of medicines and vaccines, it's a good moment to reflect on how critical the pharmaceutical market in Nigeria is to Nigeria's future and to driving economic growth. Nigeria and Africa imports, unfortunately today, 70% of pharmaceutical products that are consumed. And COVID has shown that countries, especially large ones like Nigeria, want some level of self-reliance for critical health inputs. We've seen stock out of commodities for many health conditions, including chronic diseases during lockdown. We've seen shortages of products required for COVID care, face masks, PPEs, test kits, and now vaccines. The COVAX facility that I lead was set up as a global multilateral solution to ensure that no countries were left behind and all countries had fair and equitable access to vaccines, and to fight the vaccine nationalism that has led to gross inequities in vaccine distribution. Over the longer term, one of these solutions is also to investigate for key health products more decentralized manufacturing.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think there was a glitch because we actually started playing again from the beginning. Thanks to Dr. Aurelia, the Managing Director of the COVAX facility, for the good work and especially for continuing to push against vaccine nationalism and helping many countries in Africa and other parts of the world to get the amount of vaccines we've gotten so far. So we'll move over to our esteemed panelists. Again, like I mentioned, the key objectives for us is really to discuss what's going on, where are we in terms of local manufacturing for medicines and vaccines, and what are the key bottlenecks, and what do we think can be done to push away these bottlenecks, or to jump over the bottlenecks. So please, for each panelist, we'll want it really focused on, you know, what's going on, what are the challenges, and what can be done, so that it will help us at the end of the day to be able to put together that advocacy package to take this conversation beyond just those of us in this room. So I would start by inviting Dr. Fidelis, who is the chair of PMG MAN, to speak to us. Please, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for having me at this event. It's an event that is important and that is timely, at a time like this, when the entire world is grappling with, how to survive the disruptions that have been caused by COVID-19. This morning, I simply have come with a very short message that there is no other path to sustainability in a country than local manufacturing. A country that fails to manufacture whatever they consume, be it pharmaceutical products, be it food, be it guns and ammunition, be it whatever, right, would certainly not be sustainable in the long run. Because there will be times like this, such as we have now in the midst of a pandemic, where every country would have to protect their own. I am not surprised at, the so-called, vaccine nationality and politics that surrounded, vaccinations or the availability of vaccines and the other therapeutic agents, for managing, COVID. Every country is affected, every country is impacted, and the primary loyalty of any leader, right, is to her people. There is no leader in the world that would leave his country, her people, that is under fire, to go and attend to some other countries because those countries are unable, right? So it's a simple message that the pandemic is sending to us right here in Nigeria. It would have been nice, it would have been nice if somebody from NAFDAC were in the room, in this conversation, because they are key to whatever we do in the manufacture or the importation of drugs. It would also have been nice if somebody from the Federal Ministry of Health were in the room, because they, in the end, enunciate the policies that underpins the success or otherwise of any manufacturing venture in the pharmaceutical field that you set up in Nigeria. Now, what are the issues that are mitigating against the expansion of access and availability to drugs in Nigeria? If I just put it for short, it is essentially the absence of a clear-headed and targeted policy by government to protect an industry that is so key to national development. Now, any country that cannot manufacture on a sustainable basis, the drugs that they consume is in danger of being consumed in times of a crisis, in times of war, and in times of pandemics. And Nigeria, unfortunately, is playing the reactive game at the moment. We are not, we do not have a clear-headed and a focused policy to address how to make drug manufacturing sustainable in Nigeria. Now, it takes a crazy person like me and my other colleagues that are manufacturing in this country today, to actually play that nationalistic game of establishing establishing industries, for the manufacture of drugs. The least investment that it will cost to set up a plant in a country like Nigeria today, because everything that's required for setting up a manufacturing, pharmaceutical manufacturing plant in Nigeria, right, is not less than 5 billion naira. And I'm talking of just one line, say a tablet line alone, or a liquid line alone. But when you begin to go to other bigger and more complicated and complex therapeutic agents like infusions, like injections, and so on and so forth, you will be talking of amounts, in the tens of billions of naira. Now, these brave individuals have invested in a field that has no, protective guard, for them. And therefore, they are not protected in any form or shape. Given the fact that we know that things in Nigeria are not stable. In other words, you have all manners of policy somersaults. One minister comes, one minister goes, new policy, each of them, and there is no sustainable, a focused, plan to address, all of those things. It is important, first of all, that, the policy angle be taken care of. The second thing, of course, is the death of the volume of forex that is required. Central bank at a time like this during COVID has shown that they are willing to assist, but it's not good enough to have, a wad of naira notes in your hands. You've got to have dollars, right, for the importation of equipment, raw materials, excipients, and all other things that are needed for manufacturing, right, before you can actually successfully manufacture in Nigeria. Now, unless that regime, that area of important need, is addressed, every industry, including the pharmaceutical industry, is going to shut down one by one. I'm not being alarmist here. I'm just telling you, facts as they are. Now, the third thing, of course, is that we also have a route to market or supply chain, supply value chain, or if you want to call it logistics, that is a bit confusing. A bit confusing because it's allowed every company can hurry to play in that field. That's okay. I have no problem with people, with non-pharmacists playing in the field, right? It is just that people that play in the field ought to be guided and properly monitored. Because in the end, pharmaceutical products are poisons. And if we just leave it to the whims and caprices of every player, to do what they want in the industry, what you find is that rather than being of good to the citizens, right, the manufacture of products in the country might be a problem, in itself. However, a good thing is that as we are today, we are in a good place. We are in a good place because local manufacturing still remains the only antidote to fighting, the prevalence of fake and substandard products in the country, because it's not easy to fake or manufacture fake products locally. It is much more difficult to do that locally, but it is easier to import all manners of products and label them, and bring them from any country in the world. And without, necessarily throwing decorum, to the wind, right? We all know the countries that are involved in this, right? That is where we all know that, countries like China, countries like India, countries like Pakistan are involved in this kind of thing. And that is where governments' diplomatic play out there becomes important. How do we protect our country from the influx? Even though statistics is saying 70% of the drugs that we consumed are imported, that is not entirely true. That statistics has come down to between 55% and 60% today. The unfortunate thing is that Nigeria is, like most developing countries, do not have good statistical data, and reliable statistical data to play with. Right? But statistics in itself.
Kindly round up. Kindly start rounding up, sir.
Right. Our opinion has come down to between 55% and 60%. Right. Now, government should begin all kinds of diplomatic play, out there to ensure that any product that is coming from whatever source in the world is validated by the governments of those countries, right, as good enough for the consumption of Nigeria. COVID will come and go. The important thing is the lessons of COVID. Did we learn anything? What are the plans, that we have in place to ensure that we are not caught napping again when another pandemic visits the world? So those are my opening remarks, and I yield the floor, to the organizers. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Fidelis. Not the least of all for actually being one of the courageous ones who has taken up this huge challenge, despite the terrain. I felt it was important to actually give you that amount of time because as chair of PMG MAN, besides the issues you deal with your own company, you also sit on a table where you collate views across all the other local players. So thank you. So quickly we'll move on to Mazi Sam. I'm sorry, sir. When I was introducing you, I forgot the most important introduction because I am fully aware that you've decided to also throw in, take up a bigger challenge. So Mazi Sam is also a presidential aspirant for the 2023 elections. Thank you, sir. So please, sir, yeah, I know, just try and keep it brief so that we can go around the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Nkata, for that. Let me acknowledge very wonderful people here at this forum. I won't forget to mention my chair, Dr. Ayebe, who is on this panel today. I'm glad to see you, sir. It's a long time I saw you face to face. I also want to acknowledge the continuing effort of NESG to continue to lead thought development and to flag certain critical national issues. That's the basis. That's the reason the Economic Summit Group came to being, how to influence policy, influence government activities in the different thematic and sectoral groups that impact the economy. So I'm glad that the tradition is being kept. Now to the issue at hand, I believe that the critical issue is that, as Fidelis mentioned earlier on, for over a long time, there has not been the policy on healthcare provisioning, manufacturing, distribution, and all of that has not been motivated or matched by consistent action. Actions lag behind policy. That's the critical thing, because way back in the 2000s, 2005, 2010, they have set up targets as to what you call the drug policy and the health policy, that by the year 2005, we should have been producing up to 75% of our essential medicines in Nigeria. Even though by year 2021, we're arguing whether it's 40%, starting where we ought to be policy of government. And that is due to several things: inconsistency of policy, roll forward, roll back, one step forward, three steps backwards. So a policy, even though some of the policies look good, but they've not been matched by consistent action. Two, the COVID shock kind of woke us up to begin to think about action, implementation of policy, following through with policies. But that shock for me was not deep enough, because it was short. I can see it's very short lasting. So it's going to be easy for us to go back to our ways, because I wish the shock was bigger so that we really have woken up. But let's hope that at least we'll have a week. And that's what I think that may have motivated the Health Sector Intervention Fund from CBN, which is in line with what the industry have been saying. This is a capital-intensive industry. We are fragmented in this country, little people doing little things, and so we cannot compete globally. The global manufacturers from India and China overrun us easily, and that has been depressing further development of the industry. But if we have strong capital support, then we can do bigger projects. We can enlarge our capacities and capabilities, and can move on to other bigger, other therapeutic areas that we're currently not doing. So that's how the CBN intervention is a very welcome development, and has put some smiles and created some motivation and excitement in the industry. However, it has not come without its own issues, because the benefits that we're expecting, which ought to be as soon as possible, are not being realized because of delay in getting foreign exchange to be able to convert the Naira loan we got from CBN to buy equipment and raw materials, as Fidelis just spoke. So that's a major issue. It's a major deterrent. It's a major bottleneck. My advice to CBN, because part of my recommendation is that there should be a second and third tranche. This first tranche is already consumed, and it's like a little drop of water in the ocean. CBN should, after the first 100, go to second 100 or 200 until they can see that we have really reached 100 billion, which has been lost by foreign exchange, increase in inflation. So people who borrowed the money 1 year are already ready to pay interest, and yet the goods, the equipment have not come. The second matter related to that is the problem of the totality of visionary approach to a policy. When the federal CBN gives this facility, the customs and other regulatory agencies are not brought on board to buy. I have people who have brought some of containers of equipment and raw materials, and they're being delayed unnecessarily by customs, and that's asking them to pay unnecessary charges or creating other things that would delay the ability to transform the goods into the materials into finished goods. So every time government has a policy, should bring all the stakeholders together to buy into the vision. Custom thinks their job is to make money, and they don't care whether it is for COVID, whether it is for medicines, whatever it is, they just treat everybody similarly. That's an area I think is also causing a bottleneck, and we should seek how to solve it. As I said, I believe that if we're able to get foreign exchange allocation rapidly, or completely part of the loan, each time you give, you separate the ones that are foreign exchange components and give the money, or you send, we open LCs, CBN through the bank and just send the money. It will save a lot of headache and make sure that the benefits are realized soon enough, because it will soon be time for repayment. And when you are buying foreign exchange at rates different from what you put in your plan, it immediately diminishes your capability to begin to pay back the loan. And then this is how loan defaults are inadvertently motivated. I also think that where Nigeria also, when we go past this stage, after the second and third tranches, this second and third tranches should be now focused specifically on APIs, active pharmaceutical ingredients, because until we begin to make active pharmaceutical ingredients in the country, we will still be largely imported. I mean, because when you're doing secondary or tertiary manufacturing, a substantial amount of your inputs are still sourced from other clients. So we need to begin to do APIs in the country. And this first tranche is not enough to create the enabling, the sufficient capital to go into that. And then even in vaccines, first of all, have issues. Not only is there higher requirements of GMP and clean room and all that is required, which is expensive. Customer base is limited. Mostly customer is either government or multilateral agencies. So sometimes you don't have vaccines sold in the private market. We want to be sure that our governments are ready to buy our vaccines, because we have had cases where we're told to make HIV products. We made HIV products, say no, they prefer to buy the ones that are globally bought through global, the multilateral agencies and global fund and all that. And that frustrated a lot of people who invested in HIV/AIDS products. I hope it won't happen in vaccines down the road. We have capacity issue in parenterals, IVs, infusions, as was said. Government also need to put dedicated funding in this area. The way it is that if we want to put money in vaccines, we put money in vaccines. Want to put money in parenteral, right now the 100 billion is just for general plant upgrade for making both for vaccine, COVID and non-COVID related. So there must be a holistic policy that sees the end from the beginning, so that we can sequence what we do at each stage. But to say we have started and they say half bread is better than no bread, we only ask that to speed up forex allocation, speed up clearance of the raw materials and the equipment, so that we can get the benefits rapidly. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir. Thanks a lot. Again, we hear the issue of the capital that is needed, the forex challenge, which is dwindling the expected benefits of the CBN loans, and the fact that more of these interventions are needed and should actually be even deliberately targeted to several subcomponents, API,
the customs,
yeah.
Nigerian customs.
And the issue of government not putting everybody together on the table, so that as the CBN is releasing the money, then the other agencies that should facilitate that money translates to the expected benefits, don't become a clog in the wheel. So thanks a lot. So just to break a bit, or no, maybe I'll leave him to let's also call this in. I was going to bring somebody from the finance side, but I think it will be important at this point to hear from the CEO of May and Baker, especially given the critical relationship that May and Baker already has with government around vaccine manufacturing. So, Mr. Patrick or his representative, it will be good to to hear from you what exactly is going on. The first two speakers have spoken about medicines. Where are we? Why are we not actively in this play now? We're hearing a lot of movement around Ghana, in more recent times, Rwanda, Senegal, the North Africans, and South Africa. So where are we? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, the moderator. I would have to first apologize profusely for my managing director, Mr. Patrick Aja, who is unavoidably absent here today. He would have loved to be in this fora, but for some unforeseen circumstances. So without taking much time, yes, of course, there's a lot happening in the space right now. This is not a fora to perhaps begin to toot the horn of biovaccines. But in terms of strategy, of course, biovaccines, the joint venture between federal government and May and Baker, of course, has a board. We have an overarching strategy to address the issue of local vaccine manufacturing. So I'm not sure if you can see my slide. The slide tries to, in a nutshell, look at the 5 cardinal areas that our strategy is looking to address. Of course, the first is to address infrastructure for capacity building for local manufacture of essential vaccines. Of course, these are speaking to the traditional vaccines that we currently have in our childhood immunization. The second pillar is, again, infrastructure for development of novel vaccines critical to the region. Of course, when you are able to manufacture the traditional vaccines, the skills you learn from it would now be translated to begin to address those challenges that are peculiarly Nigeria's. So for instance, every year we'll have the Lassa fever outbreak, and a couple of them. These are vaccine preventable diseases, but because of the shortfall of the capacity to be able to do this locally, we're not yet able to address this challenge, which is peculiarly ours. And of course, which no big pharma will invest money in except Nigeria does. The third is institution to support and enhance awareness and coverage of the EPI vaccine. Of course, there is the issue of vaccine hesitancy. We've also identified that a major way to address this is to manufacture these vaccines locally. I mean, no Nigerian would want to kill another Nigerian. The fourth is, of course, supports our National Control Lab and NRA to be fully functional. And the last but not the least is training and capacity development for the people who would carry on this dream, or rather this effort. Speaking specifically, because for this conversation, we had planned to speak on the need for collaboration with all stakeholders to identify implementable actions and financing needs and timelines to competitively produce Nigerian vaccines. I'll try to answer this question with what I have termed a critical success factor pyramid. Of course, at the top of this pyramid is the technical factors, which are basically technology partnerships, because you need technology partnership to begin to manufacture the current Nigerian vaccines of interest, because most of them are traditional vaccines. Okay, there is, of course, the skill gap, the expertise and experience that is required, and last but not the least, infrastructural requirements. Beneath that, you have the enabling ecosystem. Of course, the earlier speakers have spoken about policy somersaults. The policy trust to support this effort, one that would address issue of market access, market shaping, and of course, some incentive for technology transfer. Still under enabling ecosystem would be, a look at the regulatory environment. Apart from NAFDAC, we've also had contributions about custom, who largely feel they are a revenue-making agency of government. And last but not the least is funding and grants. Yes, funding is one thing, but having funding in the right currency, particularly at this initial stages where you require to procure equipment, most of which are not manufactured locally. So you could have Naira, but access to Forex to be able to import the required equipment and machinery is also a challenge. But at the base of all this, of course, something to coordinate all of this is the vision, a compelling country vision with clear agenda and coordination. Of course, this ensures that efforts are not replicated, that we are all moving in one direction as a country. In other words, stakeholder alignment. I mean, it is, there's no gainsaying the fact that health security is a strategic national asset, which, I mean, all hands has to be on deck to ensure that we achieve it. Over. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Everest, for attending on behalf of your CEO, and for actually enlightening us on what's going on and some of the critical success factors. Again, amongst the things mentioned is, again, funding and in the right currency, especially as you mentioned, at these early stages, getting those grant type funds that can help stimulate the process. So I would want to invite Mr. Kunle Oyelano, who is the CEO of GSK and a member of NairoPharm. We know that besides the local firms, we have multinationals playing in this space, right? And there is manufacturing by local companies and there is manufacturing in Nigeria, which could be by local companies, by multinationals, or by special partnerships, created between different interested stakeholders. So why are we not seeing a lot of movement from the multinationals in terms of manufacturing within Nigeria?
Thank you very much, Carter, and thanks a lot to the Nigerian Economic Summit Group for the invitation. And I think it's very good that we're having this kind of discussion as part of the pre-summit. As everyone has said, I acknowledge what Dr. Anyebi has mentioned and also what Mazi Abu also mentioned. The pandemic has given an impetus to the desire for us to manufacture medicines and commodities, medical commodities locally. We all recall at the beginning of the pandemic last year, some of the constraints that were there globally, not just in Nigeria, actually. Virtually all countries in the world experienced that constraint in getting PPEs, in getting masks, and getting some medicines, because there was a disruption to the global supply chain. So it wasn't particularly a Nigerian thing, but it's good that we're discussing how Nigeria can actually leapfrog the pharmaceutical industry, the manufacturing sector of the pharmaceutical industry into the global value chain. And we mentioned that this impetus came largely from the lessons of COVID. On one angle, if you look at the lessons of COVID also, it might be able to provide us one of the ways forward with a clear path forward. I acknowledge the fact that I think it was both Mazi and Aurelia that mentioned that whatever solutions we come up with to actually achieve this leapfrog of our industry, of the pharmaceutical industry in Nigeria, needs to be sustainable over time. And when I say that some of the lessons that we probably should consider and use going forward will still come from the COVID pandemic, I'm sure everyone will recall that maybe for the first time in the history of the world, vaccines that would have taken probably 10 years to develop, to do the research, the development, and the manufacture took roughly about 9 months, 12 months. And we need to step back a bit and interrogate how that happened. And I suppose that part of the solution that we all should be looking at will come from that. That largely happened because we had companies on a global basis collaborating. It wasn't, if you look at the story of how these vaccines were developed, you rarely will find any instance where a company went completely alone. You had prior competitors collaborating. You had some company, Pfizer, for instance, from a company, a multinational company, collaborating with another research-based company in another country. And I think it offers useful lessons for all of us in the path forward. And what am I talking about as per the key lessons that we should try to apply to our desire to leapfrog into the global value chain for our industry, especially in terms of manufacturing? One of the things, and I'm talking about a model that has worked in other countries, where one of the fastest, lowest hanging fruits to actually achieve this forward path, this sustainable path over time, is for the multinationals to collaborate with the local companies, the local manufacturers, in terms of building their capacity, in terms of making sure that building their quality systems, building their quality systems so that they can actually even export, such that some of their volumes, some of their possibly idle volumes can be fully utilized. And I think that's one of the paths forward, and we've seen that that does work. I would mention also that it's a path that has already been worked on in Nigeria. My organization already is collaborating with one of the leading companies in Nigeria, and I also know another multinational company, global company, that is doing the same elsewhere. I'm also glad that the representative of the CEO of Miambika also mentioned regarding collaboration, even in vaccines. And it's something that we're also always open to as one of the leaders in the vaccines industry in the world. That probably for me is one of the biggest opportunities that we should be exploring as a clear path forward, as something to put on the table, making sure that the global companies, the multinationals, the research-based companies can actually collaborate with the local players and have some contract manufacturing, or what you possibly will call toll manufacturing within the country. It started, but there probably needs to be some framework around it to guide how it will proceed. If you talk about in terms of risks, of course, for any endeavor, risk would always exist. And the risk is that whilst what we all want to do, what we all agree is the way to go, whilst we want to achieve that, we need to be mindful that it needs to be sustainable. Whatever pathway we choose, whatever methods we want to go with, is sustainable over time. We don't want a situation where where policy decisions are taken that will lead, for instance, to scarcity of medicines. And we know, of course, what comes with scarcity. We know what will come with it. Fake drugs infiltrating. Our borders are probably not as strong as they should be. And of course, it will put the lives and even livelihoods of people in Nigeria at stake. And that should not happen. What should be the priorities? As we proceed, I think one of the things we should look at in terms of priorities is, how do we formalize this issue of the partnerships, the collaboration between the global players, for them to bring global best practices into Nigeria for the local manufacturers, such that they're able to actually partner with them? I can tell you that this has started. I've mentioned 2 clear examples of where this is going on. One of the things that needs to further happen is for us to have a clear framework around contract manufacturing within Nigeria. And I'm glad to mention that I believe the regulator is already working on that part. So that's one clear thing. What's the priority? I'm pretty glad that, as all of us have mentioned, the issue of the support, the 100 billion intervention fund from the central bank. I think central bank government has done something marvelous in this regard. It has enabled many of the local companies to upgrade, to retool, and to increase their capacity and probably work a bit more on their quality. And I think that should continue. From the perspective of the pharma industry, should be prioritized for foreign exchange. We all know that there's a bit of a constraint of that within the industry. There should be a clear prioritization for the pharma industry at large, the entire industry, because we know that we deal in medicines and commodities that saves lives every day. So for me, that's probably that's probably the second priority, beyond having a formal framework for that collaboration between the global players like ourselves, which we can bring our global best practices to Nigeria, and of course, local players. And one of the possible advantages of this is, apart from the fact of that we are able to increase the capacity utilization in Nigeria, we're able to work towards that path of improving drug manufacturing. I'm also conscious that AFCTA is right at our door. It's important that this collaboration happens so that the pharma industry in Nigeria can take good advantage of some of these openings. I can tell you, for instance, that I'm not really aware of any local company that currently exports outside of the country, outside of the country. But if a company like us, for instance, is able to put a global quality stamp, a global stamp with the partners we work with, of course, we know that will increase the exportability in cost of such medicines. And that's a path we're already working on. And that's also a clear path that many other multinationals are willing to work on. Probably the final priority really is just to support the early movers. I've mentioned a couple of the local companies that are already early movers in this regard. And even some of the global companies like ourselves are also early movers in this regard. That's probably on the supply side of how we can improve manufacturing. Sometimes, probably not here, there probably also needs to be a discussion on what needs to be done on the demand side. Because in reality, it takes 2 wings for a bird to fly. And you can't focus on one without looking at the other. But I think I'll pause here and maybe probably make more remarks as we go on.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kunle. I particularly like that highlighting that issue of the need for collaboration, because the truth is, even if CBN was to release all the money, right, for a country of 200 million plus people, running at scale for basically essential medicines and more, will still require some level of partnerships and collaborations, so that we can also leapfrog some of the systems. We don't need to reinvent the wheel with everything. There are places where we can just jump the next level, and really make sure we are benefiting. And the issue of the African, the Free Trade Area Agreement is very important, because we need to actually position ourselves to really, benefit from this agreement and see all of Africa as our playground and our market, and this is a good point to bring in Dr. Abdul Mukhtar from the AFDB. He is the director at the AFDB, but he's also Nigerian, so we would also hold him to task to ensure that, how do we, you've had the issue of funding. CBN has put in some funds. CBN money comes in Naira. We have issues of converting that to the needed Forex. Now we have the opportunities with AFTAC, and we're also aware that the AFDB is developing a Pan-African farmer strategy. So how does all this fit in to provide us opportunities to boost local manufacturing in Nigeria? What is it that we should know or that is available that can be tapped into, coming from that AFDB, not just as a DFI, but also looking at the entire African market? So Dr. Abdul, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nkata. I know on the program you said I should be speaking for 12 minutes. I don't know whether that is still the case, but I'll try to be quick and try not to repeat what everybody has said. So good afternoon, everyone, and it's good to see everyone.
So sorry, Dr. Abdul. We'll give you additional time because we hope by the time you're done, there will be some money on the table. So feel free to add additional 3 minutes.
I don't know about additional, but anyway, look, good to see everyone. Special shout out to my good friends, Dr. Olumide from IFC and Dr. Ola Brown that I see on the call. Good to see that you still actively engage in the sector. So look, not only forget about I'm Nigerian and so on, but the African Development Bank, as many of you would know, Nigeria is the largest shareholder in the bank. Nigeria was one of the founding members. So when this bank was set up in 1964, Nigeria actually, even as it is now, Nigeria is the #1 shareholder in the bank. In terms of portfolio, we have our largest share portfolio in Nigeria. So Nigeria is really very important for us. Of course, we are Pan-African institutions, so everything that we look at is across the continent. When COVID started around last year, 2020 in March, one of the first things that we did, a couple of things. We received a lot of calls from many heads of state. At least 15 heads of state called us and basically said, what are you guys doing? We cannot continue like this. We need to have a kind of a defense system. We need to be self-reliant, so come up with a plan. So that was the charge. And for us, that was really heartwarming because it looked like there is political will from all the political leaders, and we kept getting many of these calls. So we did a couple of things. The first thing that we did, obviously, is to try to stabilize the situation. So we created a facility called Rapid COVID Rapid Response Facility, which is a $10 billion facility targeted to supporting governments and stabilizing social protection issues, economic progress, but also helping some of our private sector clients. So we did that immediately just to stabilize the situation. But the most important thing that we did, in my view, is really just coming up with a plan, because we said, look, we cannot continue like this. And for 3 reasons. One, there is a strategic reason that everybody has talked about. Africa cannot continue to import 70% of our pharmaceutical products, 90%, 99% of our vaccines. So we need to be self-reliant and self-sufficient in at least those ones. Second, we need to also address the emerging epidemiological profile. And as you know, if you look at it, we should not expect really anybody to come and produce drugs for us for basic things like malaria, Lassa fever, those kinds of Ebola. We should be able to at least, have control of some of the things, because those are our problems. The third reason, of course, is from an industrial perspective. In the Africa Development Bank, industrialization is one of our 5 priority areas. And we have already, even before COVID, had prioritized the pharmaceutical sector in industry as one of the key sectors, 5 key sectors actually, that the bank wanted to support. So we did a quick diagnostic study just to have an understanding of what's going on. And some of the findings, people have already talked about that. But again, we saw a concentration of production. So 80% of the production that we see across the continent is actually in only 8 countries. Nigeria is one of those 8 countries. So that is good news. We've identified about 600 manufacturers of pharmaceutical products across the continent, only 10 real vaccine manufacturers on the continent. And in terms of the pharmaceutical companies, we found the 3 different groups. One, of course, is a local players in various countries, doing their own small production in different countries. This is about 60% of all the manufacturers in Africa. Then we saw also like African players, so mid-sized companies that are producing in one country and also attempting to sell and do business in a few other African countries. So that's about 15% of the market. And then 25% of the manufacturing market is from multinational companies that are really trying to come in and also take advantage of the big market and so on. We saw that cost-wise, African manufacturing is not competitive, unfortunately. 60% higher cost per unit than you see in India and China. So that's a part of the problem that people are talking about. When you're not cost competitive, of course, there's going to be a problem. 90% of the companies focusing on downstream manufacturing and packaging activities. So it's not really not much R&D. Less than 2% of worldwide R&D is actually situated in Africa. And we saw only less than 20 manufacturers are producing APIs. This is versus maybe about 400 to 700 that we see in India and China. 70% is therefore dedicated to generics production of that. And more importantly, I think it's important to look at, the evolving disease profile, because as we know, right now there is a preponderance of infectious disease, but we project that by 2030, there will be an increasing proportion of non-communicable diseases. So if you're a pharmaceutical player, you need to start looking at that evolving trend. What is going to happen? So what is really good for me? What should I be able to produce? So those are some of the things. And with regards to Nigeria, we've seen about 120 to 120 pharmaceutical companies in the various groups that I've mentioned. This is based on data from UNIDO. But we've also seen Nigeria, when we classify countries in terms of how integrated they are, because when you look at markets, one of the things that we look at and one of the priorities in the bank is to look at how you can integrate markets. Nigeria, we rank it as one of those we call limitedly integrated. So that's a huge problem. This is a problem you see really in the entire ECOWAS region. compared to maybe the COMESA market and East African community. So that needs to do more to integrate markets. Good news is, of course, Nigeria is a huge market in itself based on the population. So you really can get sufficient volumes and capacity just by producing in country. So the plan that we've developed, based on these calls, we worked with global players, we worked with local players, we consulted, including many private sector players across the continent, and basically come up with what we call 2030 vision for the pharmaceutical production in Africa. And the idea is really, this is not for Africa Development Bank to do or to implement. This is a plan. So the question we ask is, what can happen? What needs to happen for pharmaceutical production to really take up on the continent? And we basically outlined this plan, and within that plan, there is room really for everybody. So the key message on the plan is it's all about partnerships. It's all about collaboration. It's all about multiple players coming together, different DFIs, and we're working with many of them. It's also about coming together with the private sector, with governments, with regulatory agencies, with international players, with big pharma companies, so that they can transfer technology and so on and so forth. The goal is to shift by 2030 that number. So 30%, we found that maybe 30% local production across the continent, and it mirrors what you see in Nigeria, that by 2030, maybe we'll get it to like 60%. So that's the vision. And this is like what we think is an achievable scenario. We have actually a more aggressive scenario where we can even get to 80%. I understand Nigeria is targeting to achieve 100%. That is really good, but I think that in our own case for the whole continent, given the disparities in countries, the target is by 2030 we get to 60% local production. That is one. Number two, we also looked at all the molecules, potential molecules, and biosimilars and all the things that can potentially be produced. We screened a total of almost 2,000 biomolecules, 1,850 to be exact, and narrowed down on 30 molecules, again, based on market demand, based on evolving epidemiological profile and disease burden across the continent, and what we see based on our projections in the future. And for each of these 30 molecules, basically develop a detailed case for each, in terms of the demand, in terms of the supply, in terms of the market, where they are, in terms of what needs to happen for each of these molecules. So we have that with us. But a key part of the plan is also what we call development hubs. Look, you cannot have all 54 African countries trying to manufacture pharmaceuticals. I wish that were the case, but unfortunately, it doesn't even make sense. So what we're proposing is development of pharmaceutical hubs. So identify a couple of hubs in the East, West, South, and Northern Africa. And in each of those hubs, we identify potential countries, about 2 countries in each hub that we call NAV centers. And within each NAV center for each hub, we then potentially listed the countries that could potentially be part of that NAV center. And then started looking at how do you then connect those NAV centers, the producers, key them into those other countries through logistical and infrastructure support and development. Nigeria is one of the countries that we really look seriously we feel that it has all what it takes to be one of those hubs for West Africa. But the message for all of you here is other countries are also moving. And I'm not going to be mentioning countries here, but we know that even in West Africa region, there are at least 2 countries that are very, very active in this field, that are doing all what needs to happen, trying to put all the necessary supporting investment enabling environment to attract global manufacturing players, to provide basic, all the regulatory issues that need to provide so that they can eventually become the big players in the hubs. Now, again, Nigeria is a big market in itself, but I think that it's important if the industry in Nigeria moves quickly to solidify its position and its leadership, maybe as one of the potential big players, the NAV centers for the West Africa, at least, hubs. So that I think is important. The plan calls for an investment. We feel that we need an investment of about $11 billion across the continent over the next decade. That will involve That's just without infrastructure. So there is also a big focus on infrastructure, which is what, again, the Africa Development Bank does quite well. But in terms of just supporting the pharmaceutical sector, we estimate that maybe about $11 billion will be needed. At least in the FDB, we propose in our identified resources to spend at least $3 billion out of that, and then bring in the rest from other things. So to just go to round up, again, we can come back to questions. I think that the key messages that I want to pass really to this audience is what we've seen. Strong will from Nigeria, both the private, especially the private sector players, and everybody else, the government. The government of Nigeria has reached out to us, ADB, for support and to work together to collaborate on this. So there is the political will. So I think that we should absolutely capitalize on that. Second, manufacturing is not rocket science, but it's also, there are a couple of things that must happen for manufacturing to be efficient and to be productive. You cannot close your markets forever. So if your not cost competitive, if your cost per unit is 60%, and this is not just Nigeria, this is across Africa, and I don't remember what it is for Nigeria. And again, Nigeria being one of the big markets, mirrors many of the data that and the analysis that we've shown. You have to do something to lower that cost, to make the cost structure more attractive, because if it's not, you really cannot stop products coming, cheaper products coming from somewhere else. More importantly, now with the CFTA, Africa Continental Free Trade Area, that even creates an incentive, and also, the potential that you can also get products from other African countries, neighboring countries, that are doing well, and where they can get their act together to lower down their production cost. Power, big infrastructure, that's the big elephant in the room. You have to get cheap power to manufacture. You have to get all the basic transport infrastructure, so you can move your goods, your inputs to where you're manufacturing, but also moving the manufactured goods to the markets. That's basic, but until those basic things are sorted out, you cannot be cost competitive. And if you're not cost competitive, the chances are other countries can get ahead of you. So I think that's the second message that I wanted to say. Policy, and I think that people have talked about that, is very, very important. It needs to be really solid policy. And I know there are a lot of policies in place, but they also need to be consistent. They need to outlive governments. They need to run across generations and so on and so forth. And those we've seen examples in Nigeria, and based on my experience in Nigeria and other sectors, we've seen how the cement industry, for example, was supported to a point where there was a huge import of cement. Within 10 years, based on right policies that were applied consistently, Nigeria is now a net exporter of cement across to the continent and to the rest of the world. It can be done, and it should be done for certain important sector like the pharmaceutical sector as well. And the right policies, everybody knows what they are, they should be put in place. Regulatory framework is very, very important. I think somebody talked about counterfeit, and this is one of the elements that the regulation is one of the key barriers to development of this sector. If the message or the image is of Nigerian drugs and products being fake or counterfeit, then really it's going to be a big problem. So all players here must do whatever it takes to make sure the regulatory environment, the frameworks are put in place to make sure that quality standards are assured. But more importantly, also just work with whatever needs to happen to make sure that you get GMP certification and make sure standards are absolutely right. Finally, leave you with two things. A long-term view is really critical. So now is COVID, and everybody is awake and wants to do something. But look, COVID hopefully will come to pass. So if you're a manufacturer, you should also think long-term. You should look at what the demographics say and what other things you can do, or how you can pivot if you're now doing heavily trying to do COVID-related stuff. How you can pivot your technology, your operations into new areas. I think that's really important. So that's calls for a long-term view, because that's the only way you can develop a sector like that. Finally, this issue of working together, I think that Mazi, Sam, and other previous speakers have spoken about that. But it's really critical. If you look at in Nigeria, so you have the health ministry that thinks that everything health, including the pharma, is Ministry of Health. You have Ministry of Industry that feels that everything manufacturing, it's Ministry of Industry and Trade. Somebody talk about customs, which is under the Ministry of Finance. So they think like it's all Ministry of Finance because it's revenue and so on. Everybody has to come together. So maybe one of the things that, and this just thinking out of the box, one of the things that NESG can propose to government is maybe to create a unit, a coordinating unit above the ministries. Either at the presidential level or something, so that all these ministries can come together. But otherwise, you continue to have all these different agencies and different ministries in government just working at cross odds with each other, just everybody trying to do their own thing. So usually what we see in countries where this works, where this sector is developed, is you have a committee or something at the level of the president of the country or the vice president of the country that then will call the Minister of Finance and talk to customs, that then will call the Minister of Industry, that then will call the Minister of Health, and make sure that everybody's working together. The central bank in this case, especially with foreign exchange, that everybody's working together. Until you have that kind of structure, you really, it can be challenging. So that's one of the messages I'll leave out for you. We're very active. We would be happy to, I'm not putting any money on the ground, Dr. Nkata, sorry about that, but we're very, very supportive. So we do a lot of private sector support. One of the things from the plan, we've identified companies that we want to support. So in each country, we've already identified companies. Of course, we have minimum requirements. So we support companies that have an annual turnover of at least $30 million. All the details, the criteria is on our website, and I'll be happy to engage with any manufacturer. But the key element of the plan is identifying private sector players, pharmaceutical companies that we can support to upgrade their operations, to build new plants and so on. That's what we do. That's why we are a bank. So we have money. We're planning to spend this money to support the sector, and we'll be happy to identify relevant private sector players to support. In Nigeria, we are also, one of the things we're also doing, we're working with private equity funds. So we invest in private equity funds. Some of them, those that operate in Nigeria, we're partnering with them to also identify companies, pharmaceutical companies and vaccine manufacturing companies in Nigeria that we can support. We are engaging with the NSIA, the Sovereign Investment Authority, to look at also how we can work with them to again provide funding, to again provide technical assistance, to provide support to institutions. We are supporting ECOWAS because ECOWAS is trying to develop a regulatory framework. So we are financing a project with ECOWAS that will start in the next 2-3 weeks, basically to develop a framework for pharmaceutical manufacturing for West Africa region. So we're doing all of these things. Again, there is money from us, from other development partners. We have many partners, and we'll be happy to deploy that money, because part of our role is really to identify credible manufacturers to support with financing and whatever they need. And we're ready, we're happy, and we'll be absolutely delighted to continue to engage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abdul Mukhtar. I think you already put the money on the table. Nobody is expecting that you come with a sack with some physical cash, but just even explaining the enormous amount of work that is being done, and the fact that this support is available, but of course it's not free cash. So the right systems and structures need to be in place for people to access this. And I think very key is what you put on the table, which I think as NESG would be having further conversations on as one of the outputs from this, is really thinking of how to get government to have some structure or some mechanism for bringing everybody who impacts this local manufacturing, together. So CBN is not moving in one direction, and then custom is creating delays, or the people who are meant to provide waivers are not doing that and all that. So that just like it was done for cement, and I think even some agricultural products, even more recently, everybody is sitting on the table. So when a decision is taken, then all the different players plug in, from their own angles. So thank you very much. You see why I gave you the extra time, because really we need to start identifying the solutions while discussing the challenges. So thank you very much. Dr. Olumide Okola from the World Bank IFC, please, would like you to also just chip in. We've yielded the DFI's time to Dr. Abdul Mukhtar, so please be kind enough to just keep within 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Dr. Olumide, please.
Thank you, Nkata. I don't know if you can hear and see me. I've just been promoted as a panelist. I just bring, can you hear me, Nkata?
Yes, yes, please go on. We can hear and see you.
Thank you, thank you. I just bring a slightly different perspective to this discussion. And I will start off from where Dr. Abdul Mukhtar ended. There's money on the table, but is there a market? Without having a market, that money would not make too much of a meaning. So let's unpack what we mean by the health market, and is there one in Nigeria? My comments will be mostly generic, but they apply to the pharmaceutical sector. The pharmaceutical sector is that part of the market on the supply side. So the hospitals, the doctors, the drugs, the consumables, all of that are on the supply side. Is there a demand side? There's a tiny demand side. That demand side is also very fragmented and not organized. If all of the policies that has been discussed in the last 1 hour are fully implemented, drugs are being produced, the prices are right. If there is no off-taker on the demand side, all of this will come to naught. And it's something I think we also need, even though we're pharmaceuticals, we're manufacturers, you need to see how you tie into the demand side of the equation. So there are a couple of things that needs to happen.
I don't know if it's me or the connection is a bit unstable. Please go on. Yeah.
So number one is that if we are talking about universal health coverage, public financing is critical. And the rationale for public financing is that it allows more and more people to access health care, so that the drugs that are being produced, you have people who can buy it. That's number one. Because right now, the amount of public financing that is made available for healthcare in Nigeria is one of the lowest in the world. If that doesn't improve, there's nothing you can do on the pharmaceutical side that can make drugs accessible, and even there will be no need to produce. Number two is, if you then increase that public financing, how do you arrange it so that it is fit for purpose? In other words, there must be what we call an element of strategic purchasing. Right now, healthcare is purchased through what we call the ministries of health. They push money to the hospital. Sometimes we don't really know what the hospital does with it. But you also have, on the other hand, what we call the health insurance agencies, who are the strategic purchasers. Those are the ones to make a difference and a meaning to the drugs and the vaccines that are being produced by the people on this call. My last point in Qatar is there needs to be drugs that are fit for purpose. Are we manufacturing a drug, a chemical compound that is relevant, or we're manufacturing a drug that is all about marketing? And again, that's where that strategic purchasing entity becomes important. So I part with three things. One, you need to increase public financing for healthcare. If you don't do that, we're all wasting our time. Number two is that the monies generated, that public financing generated, it needs to be organized in an effective way. And number three, whatever is being produced, whatever is being bought, must be fit for purpose. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Olumide. Very apt, very, very straight to the point. You know, as we discuss supply issues and all that, we need to realize that the market itself, there is a market, but the market is not organized. And with the market not being organized, it's difficult offer any kind of a predictability. So when you listen to Dr. Mukhtar and the opportunities for funding, and even the CBN funds that many people have accessed, these are loans that need to be paid back. You know, how do you even run a financial model if you have a market that is very, very uncertain? You know, you can't say these are the kind of uptake you're expecting. These are the kind of volumes that will give you a safe guarantee and all that. And it goes to the bigger issue of financing, which Olumide just hit aptly on the head. We all need to, as part of this intervention, we all also need to put in effort in making that case for having a better organized financing structure where we know the agencies that are responsible for strategic purchasing, and strategic purchasing is actually happening. So that just like you have in other countries where most people have health insurance, you know, you have access to the list of essential medicines that are covered by insurance, because those are the ones that are going to drive the biggest volume. So I think we've done a good job of taking this all through a 360 lens, from the issues with the manufacturing itself to the bigger contextual issues, the opportunities that exist, and ending it with the big health sector challenge and the health sector market, you know, that we need to expand to create the right demand to make sure that whatever we're doing is sustainable in the long run. So we'll quickly jump to the rest of the participants and see, do we have any questions, comments, or need for clarifications? Please, you can either type your, send in your questions by typing into the question and answer box, or you can raise your hand. At this point, I will hand over to my colleague, Dr. Maria Saleh, to anchor the discussions and the questions and answers. Dr. Maria, over to you. So we'll spend the next roughly 12 to 13 minutes, the next 13 minutes going through this, and so we can round up. Thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Dr. Nkata. So very, very quickly, we have quite a few questions. I see in the participants somebody from the Federal Ministry of Health, Mrs. Olubukola Ajayi, and there are quite a few questions around federal government policies. If she's online, maybe we can pass some of those questions to her. Oh, she's dropped off. All right. Okay, so I'll move on to the next set of questions. Quite a few questions for you, Mr. Everest from M&B. The first one goes like this. The federal government signed an MOU with me and Baker around 2016 on LVP. What's the current status? Has there been any progress made? And what's the ease of access to API for local pharma? So that's the first question for you. So somebody is asking, the federal government signed an MOU with May and Baker around 2016 on LVP. I'm not sure what LVP means. What's the status, and have you made any progress?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, the federal government signed an MOU. That was actually as far back as 2005. What happened in 2017 was a ratification of the joint venture by the Federal Executive Council. So post the ratification, of course, it meant reconvening the board of the company, who would, of course, provide leadership and governance for the joint venture. The board, of course, comprised 3 representatives from governments and 4 from the private sector. Of course, one of the representative of government is the chairman of the company. So a whole lot has happened from the ratification in 2017 up until today. We've largely been battling the vagaries in the industry, issue of market access, which largely we are beginning to get some closure. But presently, a whole lot is happening simultaneously to ensure that by 2024, we should start manufacturing vaccines locally in Nigeria. We're currently undergoing an EIA. We've advanced talks with some DFIs, and the architectural and internal engineering design of the greenfield projects. Previously, the federal government had a facility in Yaba out of which yellow fever was manufactured, but based on the strategy, of course, at the back of the biovaccine strategy is sustainability. Okay, so we then devised a strategy to do a greenfield that basically allows us to manufacture more vaccines from one facility, as against the yellow fever facility that allowed us to only manufacture yellow fever. This is in addition to the fact that, of course, the Yaba area is already fully built up. It is almost largely a residential area and all whatnot. So I want to reassure the questioner that a lot is happening simultaneously to ensure that this happens. Over.
All right, thank you. I think you've responded to the next question, which is about reports that NAFDAC needs to obtain a higher level of regulatory certification in order to quality assure vaccine production in Nigeria. So the question is, can M&B provide some clarity on this? Is this a rate limiting step for kickstarting vaccine production in the country?
Okay, again, thank you very much. The questioner is indeed right. For NAFDAC to be able to release vaccines, they needed to attain minimum level 3, what is called the global benchmarking tools, because there are pillars that they needed to put in place. But I'm aware that the DG NAFDAC is, squarely on top of this. I'm aware they are doing audits and follow-up audits to ensure that this happens. So this is one of the things that is happening simultaneously to ensure that come 2024, Nigeria will be ready on all fronts. If indeed biovaccines is ready and we do not have an NRA that is qualified to release vaccines, it becomes a challenge to also to be able to export such vaccines. So like I said, it's a multi-stakeholder approach, vaccine manufacturing, which was why I spoke earlier about the fact to have an overarching country strategy that ensures that we are pulling in one direction. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So the next set of questions.
Yeah, good afternoon. Good afternoon, please.
All right, good afternoon.
Yeah, this is Olubukola Ajayi, Director of Food and Drug Services.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I just want to lend my voice and support what BioVaccine has said. The Federal Ministry of Health had a joint venture agreement with BioVaccine to manufacture vaccines. As at the time of that JVA, there was no COVID. So what we agreed to manufacture at that point were EPI vaccines. So the preparations and everything with the organization was EPI manufacture. So for them to incorporate the COVID-19 vaccines has now elongated the time they will get ready for this vaccine production. And I saw on the chart, the question was asking about MVP. MVP is Nigeria vaccine policy. It is the policy of vaccines for Nigeria. In the past, or up to today, we don't have a vaccine policy. So anyone can come and do whatever they like. you could not be able to say, okay, why are you doing it? You are going against government policy. But going forward, from tomorrow, we have developed a vaccine policy for Nigeria. It is going to be launched 12 noon tomorrow. And I'm seizing this opportunity to invite everyone here who cares to be, you can join online. We also we are going to have an online virtual version of that activity. It is going to be launched by the Honorable Minister. All these things we are discussing, they are all captured, the policy draws and things, they are captured in the policy. The major trust in that policy is local vaccine manufacture. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ma. So there's one question for you. Let me just ask you that very, very quickly. So there were a number of issues around customs coordination. I don't know if you can speak to that. I thought maybe the special advisor from the Office of the Minister of Trade and Investment would still be online. But she said,
yeah, was she the one that asked the question? I think she's the one coordinating that activity. There's an SOP that is being developed. That all these organizations that are regulating, they were part of that SOP, and she is the one coordinating that. I have an officer that joined them.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, ma'am. So, so the next set of questions are on capacity building, and I'll direct them to Mr. Mupa Esuga. The first question is, what type of capacity building, such as training services, would be needed to support the plans of infrastructure and manufacturing development? You are muted, sir.
Okay, thank you. Capacity building is multifaceted. Interestingly, in late 2018 and 2019, we collaborated with NAFDAC to do what you call the Nigeria GMP roadmap, where about 160 companies were inspected. Okay, so part of the findings from there is that there is a need for capacity building. Now, I will break it down. We have what we call currently, what we can call low-hanging fruits, would be that the professionals currently working within the industry can benefit from training on various aspects of good manufacturing practice, which is a standard for pharmaceutical manufacturing worldwide. So, and in that report, there were several aspects of compliance to good manufacturing practice that most of the companies were lacking. And that is an area where we as an organization, of course, not just limited to us alone, NAFDAC is also doing their own bits, training the professionals within the industry. That's on one hand. On the other hand is that the industry will be as good as the regulator. And so there is also the need for capacity building for the Medicines Regulatory Authority. And that is also ongoing. They have currently, just like Everest said, NAFDAC is already undergoing the WHO benchmarking tools assessment. A lot of work has been done, though I'm not holding brief for them, but I know this is what is happening, and hopefully, maybe less than a year, we hope that NAFDAC should be able to attain the maturity level 3, which is the requirement for a vaccine release and approval within the country of production. Having said that, capacity building, both in compliance to the standards, is key. Capacity building in the area of product development is also a very important one. There's also capacity building in some various aspects related to engineering and design. So those are key areas where capacity building can come to bear. For the regulator, it's very important that they keep updating their knowledge. And then today, we're also saying that there is a regulatory reliance, collaborating with networks of capacity building organizations, such as the Pharmaceutical Inspections Committee scheme. It's called PICS. So today in Africa, it's only South Africa that their regulatory agency has ascended to that membership. So it confers a lot of benefits to the National Regulatory Authority, where they can access trainings, and then there is mutual recognition of things like inspection reports and so on and so forth. So again, we also as an organization, we've also worked with the Pharmacists Council of Nigeria to update an aspect of the pharmacy curriculum that speaks to quality assurance. And some of the universities are already implementing that. So those are, you are building capacity of the current professionals practicing. And then you're also working towards the pipeline of those that will join within as they graduate from the universities into the pipeline of professionals in the industry. I hope I've responded to the questions. Over.
Yes, thank you so much. So the next question goes to Mazi Sam. Can you share, maybe also Dr. Fidelis, can you share your insights on the issue of vaccine patents and how this impacts local production?
Well, thank you. For me, well, every medicine is an intellectual property and governed by laws that protect IP laws and patent laws and all that. Those laws are respected in Nigeria. And therefore, if we're going to manufacture vaccines that are not generic, then we have to take a licensing agreement with the innovator company of whichever product. Like now we're talking about COVID vaccines. So the companies like Pfizer, J&J, Moderna, and AstraZeneca will have to license Nigerian manufacturers when Nigerian manufacturers are ready to do so, and they're able to sign agreements with them. It has a limitation for sure, because you can't take it for granted. There is a general global persuasion on these multinational and innovator companies to do this licensing, but it doesn't come easily, because sometimes even if they were to do the compensation, the fees you pay, and after they're giving you the compensation, sometimes the license, you also pay royalty. I remember way back when we did the divestment from Pfizer, and we had some licensing agreement with Pfizer. We had obligations, buy raw materials from them, maybe at their own price, and also we pay royalty for using their brands if you use their brands. So it's usually tough because it reduces your margin. By the time you've done all this, the margin left for you to sustain your business is minimal. However, as a transitional arrangement, as something you need to do, if it's in products that are very unique, like COVID, then you may be able to price appropriately if you had a good market. Otherwise, that can also restrain you. As I said, it's a halfway measure. When you don't have your own brand, you don't have your own intellectually developed or locally researched moieties, you might take patents and you may get license. So it's a limitation. However, at least it creates opportunities for value addition and for local input rather than bringing finished products. And sometimes some of those finished products stay too long on the road, especially for products like vaccines that have short lifespan. If you don't transport them in appropriate environment, they may arrive on your shores already denatured and impotent. So the need to have local manufacturing, even if it's on licensing, still is important for this kind of medications.
All right, thank you so much. So, Dr. Nkata, maybe I'll just take one more question. We have several coming in, but I'll just take one more. I see we have just 1 minute.
I think just one more so we can close.
Yes, this is for Dr. Olumide. Is the NHIS in its current form efficiently organized to spur the demand side of the health market? If not, what should we be doing to get it to work?
Thank you very much. Just a couple of things. Number one, the president has just set up a health sector reform committee. Is NESG a part of that committee? Food for thought. If you're not, please try and get on that. That was announced 2 weeks ago. Number two is that Nigeria has a decision to make. That decision is, do I want to buy healthcare through the Federal Ministry of Health, or I want to buy through the NHIS? It's not a question for NHIS, it's a question for the country. So what happens today is that monies is channeled to hospitals through the Federal Ministries of Health and the State Ministries of Health. Monies is at the same time also channeled to the NHIS to buy healthcare for those who are enrolled under the NHIS. What I believe Nigeria needs to do is to make a decision. Do I want to do passive purchasing through the Federal Ministry of Health, or strategic through the National Health Insurance Schemes and the state insurance schemes, where you would then have a market that brings public and private providers together and would then be able to offtake most of the drugs, the consumables that is produced by the private sector. I think that decision is easy, but it needs to be made at the highest level. So in brief, no, the NHIS is not appropriately structured to deliver, but it is not a decision that can be taken at the NHIS level. It's something that needs to be done at that level of the presidential committee, which I do hope the NESG would try and get on before it's inaugurated sometime next week. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. Apologies if we didn't get your questions, Adora, Naima, and Joy. We'll try to get the panelists to respond afterwards. Over to you, Dr. Nkata.
Yeah, so thank you very much to all those who sent in questions and the panelists who provided answers. Olumide, thanks a lot for that reminder. We will definitely take that feedback. And for those whose questions have not been answered, we'll try and get responses and then post those to you. So I'll hand over to Dr. Ola Brown to now close the session. Thank you very much, everybody.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Ola Brown. I run the Flying Doctors Investment Company, which does venture capital and private equity, as well as infrastructure investments across the healthcare value chain. I'm also head of the Health as a Business unit at the NESG. It's a pleasure to be giving the closing remarks for such an interesting discussion. Last year, I was part of a take-private transaction. So I was part of a syndicate of private equity investors that bought a majority stake in a pharmaceutical company. And we entered that transaction being very, very passionate about doing things differently. So I have personal experience of both the opportunities, which we've highlighted, but also the challenges of pharmaceutical manufacturing in Nigeria. Challenges like API manufacturing, for instance, and the fact that it's actually cheaper to bring in finished products than to make your own APIs in Nigeria right now at the scale we need them, especially with the API competition from China and India. Things like Forex allocations and the fact that it's very difficult. We can get Naira facilities, but then it's very, very difficult to access dollar allocations to buy machines for expansion. Customs, the issue of delays, the issue of tariffs, the issue of importation of inputs, for instance, which I've mentioned as well about the earlier when I was talking about the API importation, which further present a challenge. The cost of manufacturing, the cost of transportation, competition with imported fake and substandard drugs, and the policy issues And of course, the big elephant in the room that I'm grateful that Mr. Olumide mentioned, which is, I titled the blog that I wrote a few years ago on this, the mystery of market size in Nigeria, and actually how big the consumer market is and how organized the consumer market is for certain types of products. I'd like to sincerely thank all of our speakers for giving your time to us today. You could have been anywhere else, but you're here with us, and we're extremely grateful for that. I'd also like to thank the NESG team. None of them have been mentioned, but they worked behind the scenes to make sure that this event was a success. I'd like to thank the government representatives for giving us your time and highlighting some of the enabling policies. Sorry, my lights are on now. And highlighting some of the enabling policies that you're working so hard on to make sure that this aim of increasing manufacturing capacity in Nigeria becomes a reality. And I thank our wonderful audience for your interest and all of the questions and answers. And I'd like to reassure everybody that the conversation does not end here. In fact, the work starts here for the Health Policy Commission, because we will be putting together a working paper that will be circulated to relevant stakeholders, highlighting the important points raised in this discussion and making sure that everybody that has participated in this discussion has their voice heard. On social media, particularly in the past few months, on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter if you're abroad, there's been a trend which has been called the Japa trend. And it's young people showing their first pictures in Heathrow Airport or JFK or Charles de Gaulle and celebrating the fact that they've escaped Nigeria and urging people to congratulate them for leaving Nigeria. And everybody comes on and says congratulations for this like first Japa picture. So I'd like to thank everybody for your attention. And even if you have to Japa physically, thank you for not Japaing mentally. Let's continue to work towards a better, stronger pharmaceutical industry, a better, stronger healthcare industry, and a stronger Nigerian economy. Thank you very much.
Very good. Very good, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ola, and thanks everybody.
Thank you, Dr.
Have a
Ola,
good day.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This is the color we get it.
I've done it. I think it's not correct.
It's not correct.
Salute me. I'm black.